Waves and Words,
Wellen und Worte.
exploring the depths of the human experience.
A journey of reflection and renewal. Hi, Barry, and welcome back to Waves and Words, a space for personal growth, creative expression, and to find a connection to self-awareness. We're happy to have you join us for a next session to inspire and to ignite your curiosity.
Hi, Carolin. So whether you're here to reflect, to recharge, or reimagine, we hope that you will come along with us as we delve into the fascinating world of intuition, exploring its power and how we can cultivate it in our lives. So let's begin this exploration together.
I'm happy to be here to talk about this topic with you, Barry, and I'm also very happy to. Um, I actually really enjoyed the time preparing this topic because I read one book I already read a couple of years ago, which really hit me a lot. And I also saw a documentary I also saw some years ago, which I really love, and I'm going to talk about that later. Yeah.
Fantastic. I look forward to hearing about the book you read and perhaps the documentary as well. Um, so intuition is often described as a gut feeling, a hunch of sorts, or a sort of an inner knowing. It's often described as a way of understanding that goes beyond just logic and conscious reasoning. And so, therefore, by tuning into our intuition, we can access a richer source of wisdom and guidance.
Yeah, so let's come back to the gut feeling later. And let's also see what it could be seen as like from a scientific way.
Hmm.
And I'd also like to think about and to talk with you about this thing, the question of wisdom and guidance. So, where does it come from?
So, yeah, to begin, I'd like to read an excerpt from William Wordsworth's The Tables Turned from 1798, so a very long time ago. And this excerpt touches on the subtle whispers of intuition. Come forth into the light of things. Let nature be your teacher. She has a world of ready wealth, our minds and hearts to bless, spontaneous wisdom breathed by health, true breathed by cheerfulness.
That's it. That's the whole poem.
So yeah, it's part of a of lyrical ballads, and that's a kind of revolutionary collection which was co-authored with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and the poem is written as an invitation to a friend. So ultimately urging his friend to stop reading books and instead step outside to engage with the natural world. And I think in that time, Wordsworth saw the growing reliance on reason and formal education, which was during the Enlightenment kind of legacy, as something that was limiting. And he ultimately believed truth and understanding could come more authentically through lived sensory experiences.
Hmm. And can you talk a little bit about why you chose this poem?
Just just like I mean, there's many poems, but it's one that I came across. I think back during when I did A levels, it kind of resonated with me as someone that likes to be out in nature, always, walking about and trying to do things or make things, with my hands and stuff like that, as opposed to just only sitting down and reading. I think there's a dual experience that could be had. There's the experience that you learn, experience that you can have from reading in books, which is very useful. But at the same token, experiences do need to be lived, and what you learn from books should be applied in your everyday life to some degree, in some way. Otherwise, it's just knowledge, I guess, being gained that is never going to be used. So applied knowledge sometimes is what is argued, I guess, by William Wordsworth in this case, and many authors, other authors like Matt Haig is a famous author in the UK, and he's very much about the lived experience as a way to be your kind of guide in life and so forth.
Yeah. So it's very interesting to me that you, as you said before, the Romantic is a period that came after the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment has been like, it pushed the science, it pushed logic reasoning and so on. And um, there was a very strong focus on the mind and thinking. And
Mm,
then somehow, I mean, epoches somehow have one tendency and then they go to the other tendency. Like the new epoch is like for the new in another tendency. It's like a pendulum, which is like from one side to the next. And it to me, it seems like we are in the same situation now. So we have been in a very strong information era or information epoch, and there are many people that are feeling burned out by this. And I think burnout is like a symptom, maybe, that
mm.
this one direction isn't really enough, or that maybe the body or the being also needs another thing. And that's why I believe also this topic of intuition and also this tendency to go more into nature became much more stronger in the last years. So this is actually my perception. I don't know how you see it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we live in the age of information at the touch of our fingertips, but not all information is useful information. And what I mean by that, not all information has been checked or fact checked or carefully curated. We're exposed to so much more, even from my childhood days where you would be excited to have a pager or the first phone where you could just call or text, to now where the younger generation and all generations, in fact, are just exposed to so much data and information. And I wonder to what degree we can actually process and handle that information. It's almost like we're always in a state of overload, wherever we're going, even if we're not connected to a digital device, but other people are, and they bring that information into conversations and so forth. And again, like you said as well, we think most recently, I guess, in the UK, thinking about perhaps 20 years ago, when the government came in and they said they were going to focus more on the kind of what they perceived as the strong skills, the academic skills,
Mm-hmm.
and all those kind of soft skills or those soft subjects such as music, art,
Mm-hmm.
drama were no longer important for society. And what they really meant was it was no longer important for the economy. They want people to be academically smart, be able to participate in debates, and and that would push England or the UK back into where they perceive the world, where the UK should be within the world. And yeah, I like this poem very much because if you break it down, I mean, come forth into the light of things, let nature be your teacher. I mean, this really kind of personifies nature as a guide, and encouraging us to tune in to what we feel and perceive directly for all our different senses, rather than just relying on second hand information. And in this sense, allowing nature to be your guide and going out and experiencing your things yourself directly, that is where pure kind of intuition, I guess, a felt sense of connection comes from. And he goes on to say, she has a world of ready wealth, our minds and hearts to bless. And I guess in the sense, he's not talking about, material wealth, but the richness of emotional and to some degree spiritual nourishment that we gain from being present with the natural world. And as we spoke about in previous discussions, there's a lot of research now showing that spending time out with nature is good for your mental health. The last couple of lines from the excerpt there, spontaneous wisdom breathed by health, truth breathed by cheerfulness. And again, these lines speak to the kind of non-analytical, the non-academic form of knowing.
Hmm.
So wisdom that arises spontaneously through play, through exploration, through connecting with other people in nature. That kind of spontaneity when we are kind of well balanced and open. It's an inner clarity that doesn't come from thinking, but rather from being and existing in that kind of present moment.
So actually, our discussion now brings me very much to the documentary I've seen. And so let me just bring in some thoughts of the documentary. So this documentary is called Insay. It's written,
Insane.
yeah, maybe you know it. So it's written Innsai. And actually, it's a story about a woman who has been working for the UN and has a burnout at 29 and steps back from her job. So she has an unlimited work contract with the UN, but she resigns because she cannot do it anymore. And um, so actually, there are some phrases that very much cling to my ears when we are talking right now. So, for example, she says in her education, she has been trained to not listen to her intuition. So she was very much into the academic world and or into the academic thinking, and that brought her away from perceiving maybe nature, but also her body, because she says at 27 she has a miscarriage and she doesn't even realize. She just takes painkillers and continues working. Um, then there is another thing they say in the documentary, which is like wisdom became knowledge and knowledge became information. So wisdom is a status or a state where you are connected to the world and where you have big, big, big knowledge, but you're also connected to the world, and this all together makes wisdom. And
Mm,
and people started to stepping back from this connection to the world, and they took information much, much, much more important, and that brought them to knowledge. And now, also with the rise of AI and so on, little pieces of information got more and more important.
mm,
And this is like the third stage. We don't even put those small pieces of information together anymore, which would be knowledge, but we just take the small pieces of information. And actually, this woman in the documentary, this woman explores intuition, and she comes to this point that intuition is very much this connection to the world. She brings, for example, another. She brings another example, the Polynesian navigators
mm,
that have been. So actually, I don't know how many years before us it has been. It must have been like maybe 2000 years or maybe 4000 years backwards. They have been sailing the ocean without any navigation systems. But they could do this because they had so much experience with the ocean and the water and also with the sky. And so they have been able to know where they are and what to do because it was like a cultural knowledge that one generation gave to the other, but they were also living on the ocean. And they had this interconnectedness. They had like a connectedness to the water, to the ocean, to the
Mm.
sky, but also to their society. This example just brings up that it had a lot to that intuition has a lot to do with, as you said, being in the world, being around with the surroundings, and
Mm.
also with making experiences. Um, and the question is, for me, a bit, and also for this woman in the documentary, why did we get lost? I mean, of course, we said we have like this focus on academics, focus on knowledge, and so on, and focus on um, science only. It's not bad to go into science and to get educated and so on, but I think the problem is to leave out everything else.
Mm.
Um, so there's another phrase they say, which is uh, really good for me, or which I think is really well. It's getting the whole situation very well. It's called "The noise of the external world is muting the sound of the inner world." So
Mm.
we stopped listening to ourselves. We stopped perceiving our feelings. So this woman, as I said, she had this miscarriage at 27, and she doesn't even realize because she maybe didn't. She was used to go over her own limits, her own limitations, to cut off the pain. And I mean, this is not an uncommon phenomenon now. I
Yeah.
when I remember my mother was always like going over her physical limits very much, and now she has rheuma.
Yeah, that sounds like a fascinating documentary. I haven't seen it
Hmm.
um, before, but it definitely sounds like it explores many different themes, um, such as from what you're saying, the importance of connecting with our inner selves in a world that is filled with distraction and stress, often or not. And we can't all be Buddhist monks or monk or hermit and go into the mountains and get rid of technology and stay away from the wider society. A lot of us are parents like you and I, so we have to kind of reconnect, replug with our inner selves while still living in this kind of busy life. And then also, the limitations of relying solely on just rational thought, and the need to reevaluate how we perceive and sense the world, I think is what you're saying from that documentary. Yeah, it sounds very fascinating, and I'll certainly go and check it out after at some point, sometime soon.
Yeah, I strongly recommend it. Just to finish, Insei is
Mm.
Icelandic for intuition, and it means the sea within, so the inner ocean, to see within, to look inside, and to see from the inside out.
Ah,
And it's such so beautiful.
that is. I I find Iceland a fascinating place and kind of culture. Um, and actually, one of my favorite musicians is Icelandic. His name is Oliver Arnolds. Um, and he has many, many beautiful songs that are based on intuition or nature. There's like a song called New Grass, for example. It's
Hmm.
about the grass growing. It's just absolutely beautiful. And he has a song called Eki Huksa, which translates as "Don't think." And the whole kind of feeling of the song is just to be free and to follow yourself and follow your own kind of way, your own expression. And I find a lot of Icelandic musicians have a lot of those kind of themes about being close to nature and stuff like that. And of course, when you go to Iceland and you see that they're surrounded just by
Hmm.
nature and nothing else, you can kind of understand they have a very strong connection to nature and the sea and things like that.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I've never been to Iceland. I actually only know Björk from Iceland. Maybe I know some pianists or some composers because of their name. They might be from Iceland, but I'm gonna check that out. I'm also gonna
Awesome.
check out Oliver Arnolds.
Yep, that's the name.
Okay, yeah, and yeah, so I'm gonna talk with my husband because maybe next time we go to Iceland. With an
You will fall in love. You'll fall in love with the nature, definitely.
yeah, I'm curious about that. What do you think? Should we talk a little bit about the psychologic science on intuition now?
Yes, yes, let's do that.
Okay, so from a psychological perspective, intuition can be understood as a form of unconscious information processing. Our brains are constantly absorbing vast amount of data, but it cannot bring everything into our conscience. So the brain is conscious, is working through everything, but it just gives 5% to our conscience, for example. Intuition can be seen as a shortcut to accessing this information without conscious analysis. It is
Mm,
often seen as an not conscious, fast information processing. That means our brain is somehow working in the background. And there's something called the dual process theory. So we have one system, which is fast, intuitive, and automatic, relying on experience, emotions, and patterns, while system number two is our slower, analytical, and conscious thought process system. And intuition firmly sits within system one.
okay,
Yeah. So,
I'm following.
for yeah, for example, there's this book by Daniel Kahneman, Fast and Slow Thinking, which I think many people know. Um, yeah, so we also have something like the gut feeling, which is so what does it have to do with intuition? It is actually when something resonates or when
Hmm.
we have stress. So, for example, I remembered when I was going through this thing when I had a presentation. So I was a student and I had a presentation. I went to the university and I don't know, I didn't feel that stressed, but somehow I must have been more stressed regarding my body. And when I arrived at university, I went to the toilet and vomited, and then I went to the classroom and had that presentation. So I didn't realize how stressed I was and how nervous, but obviously my body had to release something. Um, and this is our enteric nervous system in our gut. It contains millions of neurons and constantly communicates with our central nervous system via the vagus nerve. Gut feeling is a real biological signal combining unconscious perception, past emotional experiences, hormones, and bodily reactions. Yeah, I think everybody remembers something like this.
Mm.
Yeah.
So would you say that gut feeling is what others would call intuition, but when it manifests as a physical sensation? Like, so you said you had to go to the toilet and you know you threw up and stuff like that. So often, as you mentioned, experience perhaps in in the abdomen or in the stomach, as some people will say, or is it separate from intuition?
I would not say that the gut feeling is, or the enteric nervous system is intuition.
Hmm.
Intuition can also be something else, or, but I think the gut feeling or the enteric nervous system is a part of intuition or contributes to intuition.
Mm.
So, why is the enteric nervous system so important? Because it is actually, it is stronger, it has a stronger connection to our body, to our senses than our brain. So when I eat something that's not well, or when I perceive there is so most of the senses are senses are bodily perceptions, and this arrives somehow faster into our enteric nervous system than into our brain. And so, because these are some kind of feelings and perception of the outer world,
Hmm.
they contribute to our intuition, of course. And as I mentioned before, we don't perceive everything consciously, only 5%, and the rest, 95%, is worked through unconsciously. So I think definitely this, our enteric nervous system can be part or is somewhat part of intuition, but it's not that alone, or
Mm.
that alone is not intuition.
So
Intuition,
so
yeah.
yeah. No, so go ahead. Go ahead.
Intuition, as I said, as you said before, I think it grows over time. The more
Mm.
experience we make, and the experience sits in our memory, but also in our body, the experience we make contributes to our intuition, and our intuition might be getting stronger over the years. But that doesn't mean that a young person can't have a very strong intuition also.
Yes.
Hmm.
But as you said, intuition relies on the gut feeling. You said about making those kind of mental shortcuts, um, and then also past experiences, I guess, as well. Kind of build up and develop over time. And again, like I said, I think I mentioned the author Matt Haig, who's quite famous because of the book, the Midnight Library, I believe it's called, um, where throughout his books, he's always it's kind of self-help books, but you know, under a layer of kind of like an adventure for the character, and through the Midnight Library, through the main character is known as Nora, journeys through the library. The author highlights that true understanding often comes from experiencing life directly, rather than overthinking or relying solely. So yes, that resonates with the idea that intuition is honed through our personal encounters and feelings. And so in that sense, it's fascinating how much our gut influences our feelings and decisions, often before we even consciously register it. So yeah, it's just a fascinating subject of how those signals from gut to brain and perhaps vice versa influence things we do and say.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I just would like to make a point on the structure we often give to intuition and analytic thinking. When I was doing the research, I found some, not all accounts, but some accounts in which there has been made a division between like the intuition and the analytic system. And analytic thinking is often it has been described as the logic thinking. And on the other hand, intuitive thinking or intuitive feeling has been described as illogic. So I studied philosophy, and there has been a big discussion about whether emotions are logic or not. And just to make one thing clear here, logic is not the same as analytical or conscious. Logic means you have some facts building together an argument. So one fact builds on the next one, and one thing leads to the next, and all this together is a logic argument. If one fact does not build on the next one, but you still build it within the argument, it's illogic. So what if you say intuition or feelings or emotions are illogic, is you would say their structure is not built purely on each other, which I don't. I refuse to believe this. Why? Because we just talked about the thing or the fact that intuition is often unconscious thinking. And we don't know how all of this works, how all of this comes together. But still, in the end, often our intuition comes up to being the right choice or the right feeling. But later, when we learn some facts, for example, yeah. So, and on the other hand, emotions itself can be a logic part of a process. So, when you, for example, if you go through a loss of a person,
Mm,
there needs a certain time of mourning and of sadness to adjust your soul to the new world without this person. And that's why emotions are also logic and logical in the process. So
mm,
that's why I strongly refuse this division between analytic thinking and intuitive thinking to be marked as illogic, and analytical thinking to be marked as logic. In the analytical conscious way of thinking, we go through every fact consciously, but in the intuitive thinking system, we don't go through every fact consciously, but this might still be that this is a logic way of leading to a decision.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, because our brains are just constantly absorbing and processing vast amounts of data and sensory input, past experiences, learned associations, emotional cues, environmental signals, and so forth. And so I think you're right. It's you can't just really say that conscious thought is logic and intuition is illogic in that
Yeah.
sense. It's more accurate to see them or to say that they are two different modes of cognitive processing that interact and engage with each other. And it's just like if I give the example of a chess player, for example,
Mm-hmm.
a very highly experienced chess player can see a winning move almost instantly, but they may not be able to articulate, the entire chain of reasoning behind that split second thought or that judgment. Because their intuition is ultimately built upon years of logical analysis, pattern recognition, understanding of the game's, principles and so forth. And so therefore the speed and feeling don't necessarily negate the underlying logic. They ultimately represent a highly efficient and experience application of it. So both the logic and illogic, as you say, were the conscious thought and intuition combining together and using those two different modes of cognitive processing.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, your example drives me to the book I mentioned in the beginning I've been reading. And actually, the book is called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. And he there examines intuition, but also prejudice. Two phenomena, I'd say, that are definitely not the same, but are somehow quite close to each other. So, and actually, he starts with the following situation. The Getty Museum in New York wanted to buy a kouros. A kouros is a very old Greek statue of a young man. The papers seemed correct. The object looked real. They they ordered some examinations being done by some experts. The experts made some papers and said, "Yeah, everything seems to be correct. It should be real." And so the Getty Museum was, after they bought it, they presented it to some art critics. And several art critics intuitively had the feeling of there's something wrong. So one
Mm.
woman, for example, after the Getty told her, "We just bought it," she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry for you." Like, within 2 seconds she said she felt sorry. And then another man, he said, "It's not true. It's within 2 seconds." And these 2 seconds are those called blink, like within the blink of an eye. And those these 2 persons, they couldn't really tell why they felt that, but later it came out that actually the statue was wrong. The papers have been falsified, and somehow I don't know how to call it, um, the people who made it have
Mm.
been working on the material so good that it seemed like it was old. So that also the experts who examined the material came to the result that it should be right. But also this in the end turned out to be wrong. So I'm not going through the whole story of the book. I just can recommend it. It's a very nice book, very interesting if you're interested in things like intuition and intuitive knowledge, but also want to compare it with prejudice. But
Mm.
to summarize, Gladwell examines the intuition. Intuition, like those of the first situation in the beginning of the book, is mostly reliable by people who are very, very experienced and skilled in one field, and often people those people, like also the chess player you mentioned and the experts, not the one that wrote the papers, but the one
Mm.
that the art critics, they
Mm.
have been studying their field of expertise for years. And so, I mean, um, this is like the proof on the one hand that you somehow need this analytical and academic understanding of something, but on the other hand, also the experience. So what I want to say is, so I'm a little bit of struggle. I'm a little bit struggling to bring together these aspects. On the one hand, we have intuition as a counterpart to this living in the academic analytical world. But on the other
Mm.
hand, in this book, it seems like those people who had the gut feeling right and these intuitive decisions also have been gaining a lot of expertise, but also have been studying widely. So you know what I mean? So do you understand what I
Mm.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it sounds like a very fascinating book that, kind of looks at or at least explores, from what I'm understanding, the power of the unconscious mind to process such information or images very rapidly and efficiently, and then often in ways our conscious mind isn't even aware of. So the ability to make uh, judgments or decisions in the blink of the eye, or otherwise known as snap judgments. Often not our intuitive decisions can be incredibly effective and sometimes even more accurate than decisions based on kind of lengthy analysis and so forth. But again, as you say, that shows that, or at least from what you're saying, the book highlights how expertise, say in a particular field, can hone one's ability to make those decisions very effectively. And that's based on, and as we mentioned before, years of acquired information and knowledge and a sense of, the ability to kind of sense something is real or not real, or fake or not fake, and so forth. But you're right, sometimes there's a struggle. Overthinking and overanalyzing can certainly hinder a good decision making. And so it's about, I guess, somehow within ourselves finding that balance between trusting on all the good information that we've had previously and then being able to make a decision like that on the spot when necessary to do so. And sometimes our minds can just do it for us. That gut feeling that we have in certain situations. And you said
Mm.
that, so that book is Blink by Malcolm Gladwell,
Yeah,
you said.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I
Uh,
will be certainly checking that out in due course. And yeah, I mean, it just goes on, I think we've all had those moments where we just knew something, even without having concrete evidence. Uh, so, for example, in the UK, Richard Branson is a very famous, often has spoken about relying on his gut instinct in business. So, despite not always having the detailed stats or analysis or data, he has often not trusted his intuition to launch, his many business ventures such as Virgin Atlantic and so forth. And then, in my own life, I grew up in an area that I would say is quite a lively area in nice terms. And from a young age, because of the environment I was in and the people that were around in that environment, I developed an almost primal and survival orientated form of intuition. And definitely my experiences, no doubt, honed my subconscious awareness of subtle cues such as body language, the way people moved, the atmosphere of a particular a place, all of which that could perhaps signal potential threat. So almost like a sixth sense became ingrained within me, allowing me to make rapid, often unconscious assessments for my safety or situation. And I'm sure many people who grew up in similar environments around us would say the same thing. They just knew when to cross the road, when was the right time to cross the road in a situation, what route to take home, and stuff like that, or when you could feel a situation was going to get out of hand even before it started to proceed in that way. So it's almost that kind of implicit learning leading to intuitive judgments, I guess. And I'm sure you've probably had similar experiences of where intuition has come to play.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I didn't grow up in such an area you just described. I grew up in a small town, small village in Germany, which was rather quiet. And but what I find interesting is that I have, I mean, especially if you remember the work field, there also you are encountered with so many situations. And so what's interesting for me also is to analyze the situation after you followed your intuition and you followed your intuition not. So in the working field, I once had a situation. I have been had applied for a company, and I was somehow pushed by a member of my family to go there. I didn't really feel like yes, so I went there. And the third part of the interview went very welcoming. And the second part of the interview, which has been done with another person who
Mm.
obviously didn't know about me coming there. And so the second part of the interview with this person was completely bad. And then I went out and I thought, no, this was completely weird. So, and I went home and then I got an offer for an internship and I thought, so no, not really. But this member of my family, he then pushed me to go there. And then all of my family started to push me there. And then I went, and within 3 months, I gained 5 kilograms of weight, which is very much for me, and also a very small amount of time in which I gained
Mm.
this. And the other thing is that I also stopped singing. Singing is quite important for me. It's like it gives me a good connection to myself. And there I
Mm.
didn't sing at all. And when I came back, I also felt like I can't sing anymore. I mean, it wasn't just that being there and not really having felt welcomed, but also the place where it was in Germany. It did not at all resonate with me. And so, um, and it took me actually half a year to recover somehow to say. Yeah. And but then it really started for me when I said, okay, I'm going to listen to myself more now. And it really started with going to a workshop where I met my new singing teacher. I don't know, on that day, somehow my voice had decided to come back, and then I sang it, and I started writing songs after this and so on. Um, yeah, it was like a big present from the universe or whatever for me. Yeah, but this was an example where I didn't followed my guts.
Yeah, it's interesting how often not we make decisions in our lives that are based on other people's interest in decision making. Um, and yeah, I had a similar situation where I did trust my gut feeling. I had a probation period in a company, but I felt during the probation period that company, the working culture and so forth, just wasn't kind of aligned with with me, with who I am. I just could feel myself not enjoying time there. So they did offer me the job. Um, and I went home, I spoke to my wife about it, and, luckily my wife and I are very supportive on all kind of decisions, we make. And I did turn the job down because I did have a sense that the job would misalign with my kind of values or working
Mhm.
style, and so forth. And it did mean a loss of money and looking for somewhere else, but I felt that my mental well-being and the kind of work-life balance I had, I felt I needed to find something a bit more that fitted in with family life and so forth. But you know, as you've just described, these examples, they really highlight how intuition can be a very powerful force in various aspects of our life. And on that point, you did mention that you stopped singing, but now you got a new teacher, and you found your way back to that
Yeah.
wonderful medium of expression. So I believe you did mention at the top of this podcast you were going to share something with us, I believe.
Yeah, so I have a song and I'm going to sing it to you.
Wonderful.
It's called Tiger Song. Whispers in my blood, feel it burst in my bones. One day I'm gonna break if my tiger won't come back. Once said a tiger, but he ran away, 'cause I took no care. You only get a tiger once who lives in your heart. Gotta follow his advice. I don't run anymore, I don't wanna. Now I walk around the streets and there's many things I see. So many things I touch make me cry a little more. No, I don't breathe anymore, I don't wanna. 'Cause tiger's home was my heart, but he carried it away. Now there's just a hole, sending out a wind and a yawning in my veins. Tiger, tiger, please come back, I will follow you. I learn my lesson and I understand you belong to me. Whispers in my blood, feel it burst in my bones. One day I'm gonna break if my tiger won't come back.
Wow. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Beautiful playing, lovely voice,
Thank you.
and such lovely lyrics as well. When did you write that? Is that a new song? Is that an old song?
It is so actually it is one of the first songs after this period I just have been talking about.
Hmm.
So at first I started singing again and then I started writing songs and this is one of the first ones.
Beautiful. It has such kind of raw emotion in those lyrics. Yeah, just like a for me at least, I won't ask you what the song is about because, that's as every artist likes to keep some secrets and things like that, or allow us to interpret it in our own ways. But definitely for me, like the lyrics, the repetition of "Tiger, come back, you belong to me" has a almost pleading quality to it, And you mentioned in the song one of the lines, "I learned my lesson." Kind of suggests, well, to me at least, listening to it, like a either a painful realization and perhaps a hope for, reconciliation. But there's definitely a strong feeling of yearning and a weight of absence in the song. It comes across very, very beautifully as well, and the way you sing it, kind of nice and softly as well. It kind of helps the lyrics to sitting very nicely. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. I'm not sure if there's anything you wanna add from your side to this wonderful song.
So actually sometimes the artist doesn't know him or herself what a piece of art is about. And also I'm rather the kind who says, so leave it there for interpretation because the
Mm,
artist might have something in mind when he or she is writing a piece of art or making a piece of art. But the listener or the people who watch a piece of art, they might, yeah, they might have an own interpretation, and that's actually what I would say or what I believe is
yeah.
that it that how that's the way how it should be.
Mm,
But I mean, of course, it has a reason why I chose this song to be here, to sing here in our session
mm,
on intuition. And I mean, of course, the tiger is a like also a very symbolic animal. Um, yeah.
well, yeah, absolutely lovely. Like I said, for me, listening to that, it felt like, someone is grappling with the consequences of their, maybe past actions, maybe pushing something or someone. important a way. But yeah, I mean, I'll probably listen to it again, and I hope I do get to listen to it again, and I will re-listen to the podcast, of course. And I'm sure I'll get different meaning from it, or even a deeper layer of meaning, depending on how I'm feeling at the time of listening to the song, or the time of day, and so forth. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
You're very welcome. I'm very happy to have having had the occasion to play it here. So let's talk about how we can teach our intuition, or how we can get better ourselves to listening to our intuition.
Mm. Absolutely. Um, in our busy lives, it's easy, often not easy to get caught up in the noise of our thoughts and even in the noise of other people's thoughts and external pressures and responsibilities. So making time for stillness and reflection is very crucial for tuning into our own intuition.
I imagine it can be very hard to find space for stillness and reflection in our busy lives, where you have like always a very full schedule and so on.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. So just one example how we can reach this or get to there. I started getting up at 5 o'clock a couple
Mm.
of weeks ago. So I go to bed with my child, which is 3 years old. So I fall asleep around 9 or 9:30, and then I get up at 5, and it's the moment where the whole house is still so quiet, and it's a very good time for me. Yeah,
Mm. That
yeah,
that's a lovely thing to do.
yeah.
I I'm not a morning person, but I will try that. I'll try that and see how it goes.
I always thought I was an evening person too, until I started this. So
Oh wow! So
yeah,
you kind of switched.
I switched. Yeah,
Nice,
yeah.
excellent, excellent.
I thought I couldn't do it, but it's it works. Um, yeah, but let's get to see some more simple ways to start helping our intuition, coming back to our busy lives.
Yeah, so I think very important that you pay attention to your gut feelings throughout the day. So when you have a sense about something, take a moment to acknowledge it without judgment. Often not, we think of something, we have a gut feeling, but then we start to overanalyze things or we start to have those multiple conversations in our head. And I think it goes back to what we've talked about in previous podcasts, just taking that time to step back, to breathe, and just to acknowledge those thoughts and feelings that you are having, essentially.
Hmm. So when you have been saying this, I remembered that there was a time when I went through the streets and I was asking myself, so what do you think? Like my intuition,
Mhm.
tell me. So, and then I got answers, it's
Mhm.
interesting. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So it
that is
works.
interesting.
Yeah, I just want to say it works. So,
Yeah, good.
so a second way to, or a second practice can be try journaling your dreams or spontaneous thoughts you have. Sometimes our intuition speaks to us in subtle and symbolic ways. So
Yes.
if you remember your dreams, just, I mean, it should not be in an overthought way, but just look at it, just take it as it is, and you don't need to all the time think about it, but just see it. So,
Hmm. I totally agree. I think. Even having like a little notebook with you
Mm-hmm.
in your bag or in your pocket whenever you're going around, because you never know when a good idea or spontaneous thought just pops along, and it's always good to kind of capture that moment. And journaling is a brilliant thing. My youngest, who is 12 at the moment, started journaling recently as well, and he does it, every night. Just writes down things that he's done in a day. And my wife does a something called Kansha Noto, which is you write down a few things, or at least one thing that you are grateful and thankful for during that day. So yeah, I totally agree, and I often not take out the notebook that you got for me previously, so I still have that, and I still
Mm-hmm.
write into that. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's nice. I didn't know
Yeah,
that. Okay.
yeah, still got it,
Yeah.
still use it.
Yeah, great. Um,
Um,
yeah, I just want to add, so I also started, when I started getting up at 5, I also started writing a gratefulness journal.
hmm,
Yeah. Um, so what can we do as well? Practice quiet time each day, just 5 minutes.
hmm.
So, but what does it mean? Like just sitting there, doing nothing, like meditating, or
Um, it could be so you could sit and meditate. You could do what I think I mentioned previously is when I met someone in my travels. They mentioned every time they come home after work, they just sit down for 5 minutes just to slow down. They're not necessarily meditating, not necessarily thinking of anything in particular, but they're just allowing their mind and body to slow down after all the walking, after all the work throughout the day. Or it could be something, as you just mentioned, you wake up at 5 o'clock, and in the morning time, the house is beautifully quiet and peaceful, and just having that quiet time before everything else starts, I think is important. So you don't have to be specifically focusing on your breathing or trying to clear your thoughts, but just allowing yourself to have a time of quiet is very important. And it could be outside, it could be walking in the woodlands, by yourself, or if you've got a dog or something like that. But just that kind of quiet, free time, I think is important.
Mhm. Another thing is when faced with a decision, try role playing it and ask yourself, what would be my most intuitive self do in this situation?
Hmm. That's an interesting. I think you said you asked yourself a question before when you was faced with a decision. Um, and I think engaging in that process is very important because we always talk to ourselves every day. We talk to ourselves within our minds. We might not verbally speak it out loud for others to hear, but we're always having those kind of conversations. Should I cut the bread in this way? Should I put extra butter on this toast? Or we are
Mm,
always having those internal dialogues. So I think, yeah, just kind of role playing or exploring the scenario or the situation even further and deeper is something that could be very beneficial, definitely.
mm,
So I think for those listening, I think try one or two of these things perhaps in any given week, and depending on your schedule, of course. And then after you've spent some time and some reflection on these practices, perhaps take a moment to kind of analyze and reflect what you've noticed and if you feel any difference being connected with this kind of inner sense, this intuition, this gut feeling.
mm. Intuition is one of the most important things to our soul and to ourselves. Whether we are working in a business world, in internet, or if we are working as a housekeeper, or whether we are working as a children's teacher or
Mm,
whatever, it, it doesn't matter if you're a nature person or a business person. Intuition is, I think, or I believe, very important for us as humans.
mm. Me too. I think this has been a wonderful discussion, and I've learned so much from listening to you and from the documentary and the book that you mentioned, amongst other things, and of course the wonderful song. So yeah, thank you again for your time today and on this very interesting topic.
Thank you for your time too, and thanks for our listeners to having listened. And yeah, we are looking forward to meet you next time.
Yeah, thank you. And so until our next conversation, um, may you find clarity and just build upon what we've discussed today. And take care.